Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, wherever you are. I hope you can see and hear me. This is Michael Essick. We are live on the weekly live stream. How to approach a saturated market is the topic for today's session. And I'll just mute my speakers there. Hope you're doing well. If you can see and hear me and everything looks good, please drop me a comment so I may get cracking straight away. Just sort a few things out. And yeah, where are we at? Who have we got? Who's going to be first with the comments as I prepare my slides? We have joining us today, Gary is in the house. Gary was first. Hello, Gary, my fellow Northwest Englishman, I believe. So today we are going to talk about how to approach a saturated market. Oh, here they come. Here come all the comments. Wow, that was a big influx of comments. Actually, I'm not sure Gary was first. I think Jacqueline was first. Hello, Jacqueline. Pupiful is here. We've got Andre. We've got Gary, as mentioned. We've got Janelle. We've got Iqbal. Hello to you. Dion is here. Larry King. The South London reseller. Chuck. And all is good, says everyone. Great. Hi to Mario. We got Rika. We got Guido and Dominic from Sydney. All right, awesome. So we're rocking and rolling. Today, we are going to talk about how to approach a saturated market because this was the topic that people voted for. So thank you for voting. I'll pull up the, here we go. These are the responses. Let me zoom in a bit on that. These are the responses from last week's email question about what we should do. So as you can see, zoom in a bit. Following last week, 44.7% of people voted for how to approach a saturated market. So that's what we're going to do in today's session. I've prepared some slides. This won't be a review session, kind of like we did last week, or I think the week before, where we looked at a lot of reviews, or I did some designing. It's going to be more like the keyword session we did a few weeks ago. So it's going to be more of a teaching and sharing ideas. What I hope it will be as well is that we'll kind of talk through some of these issues together and maybe hopefully you'll see things from a different angle and maybe we can kind of figure things out together as well, because really it's me just kind of brain dumping and sharing my thoughts on this topic. And I think through the live chat and stuff we'll be able to kind of share ideas and approaches and maybe come to a bit of a clearer understanding of how best to think about these things. So that's what I anticipate today. So that's how the voting looked. The other two big ones were write the title and bullet points for a specific design and using Redbubble and TeePublic with Google Analytics. So we'll put those ones on the back burner for a future session. And today we're going to focus on this one, how to approach a saturated market. So if I just close that down there. Okay, let's see what we've got here in the comments. Andrea says, great. I've watched the last episodes and I'm happy to see this one live. Cool. Nice to have you on board, Andrea. Heather says, hi, Michael. I was pestering you with a question about how long it takes to get accepted to merch the other day. I was sent the urine email from Amazon this morning. Awesome. You must be a good omen. It took me 7 weeks. Okay. Well, I'm glad I could help, Heather. Of course, I didn't help at all, but that's good. That's good news anyway, of course. So 7 weeks for anyone who was wondering about current Merch by Amazon acceptance times. Okay, great. Right, let's get into it then. So a couple of bits of housekeeping before we roll. Please do like and subscribe. It does help to give the video a boost and stuff. If you can give me a thumbs up, that's very helpful as always. And subscribe, because then you will be able to get the alerts and stuff like that when they come through. Free stuff at michaelessick.com/live. As you can see in the bottom left of your screen all the resources from these sessions. So every session we've done for the past, how long have we been doing these things now? 4 or 5 weeks is available, and it is free. This is the page. If you go and check out that link, you'll find all these resources once you sign up. So you'll get access to all these. There's like 4 or 5 PDFs, links to the replays and stuff. So just a nice centralized place for you to find slides and all the information I've been sharing. Same goes for today. So today's is already up there as well. Of course, you can ask questions live. Please do. I will answer live. I'll probably kind of take them in chunks as we go through the session. And yeah, let's figure this one out together. So this is less of a formal teaching session. I think this is more me kind of dumping some thoughts. And I think as we work through it together, it'll be helpful for us to kind of chat. So, all right. Accidental Fire says, I just want to say I'm enjoying these sessions with Michael and I'm having the best month in POD income ever. It's starting to become a business and I'm totally stoked on it. Okay, awesome. That is exactly what we want to hear. I do remember those early days when you start to get the fire in your belly and something seems to work for the first time, and it is exciting. And yeah, certainly trends and sales seem to be up right now, which is great. Thanks, Michael, and others here who have given great tips. Yeah, we had some great input as well last week from everyone kind of sharing ideas and stuff. So do please chime in if you have a thought or an idea that you think is beneficial for the rest of the group, and I'll pull them out and share them here. Travis says, hey, Michael, need to do these things a little later in the day. 8 a.m. is early for somebody working from home. Yes, but it is 3 p.m. here, Travis. And you are not the center of the universe, America. So yes, I understand that. But if I do it much later, then I tend to mess up everything around my household. So I'll leave it there. Limi says, hi. Andrea says, I really appreciate you helping the community. No problem. And DS says, made it from St. Louis, Missouri. Awesome to have you here today, everybody. Okay, so let's get into it. I will get into my thoughts right away. So the question that prompted this issue of saturated markets was a suggestion from a few weeks ago by Marek. And this is what Marek said. Sorry, Marek, I don't know whether that's a boy's or a girl's name. Hi, Michael. First off, thank you for the work you do and share with us. Here is my suggestion for one of your upcoming live streams. How would you approach a saturated market like mums, grandparents, or bodybuilding? Imagine that you have no choice and you have to do it. Thanks again and cheers. So I think my initial reaction to this was that it's obviously a topic I think that's hit a nerve with people because obviously a lot of you voted for it. So saturated markets, and how would you approach one? Imagine you have no choice. I think my first reaction was to think, well, why don't I have a choice with an endless amounts of different markets to go into, endless amounts of niches and stuff. Why am I forced to? But to play along with the game, I think I am willing to engage with that premise, and to say that maybe someone bursts into my house, puts a gun to my head, and says, you have no choice. You have to design for this. So I'll get into that in a second. But first, a couple of thoughts on saturated markets and what they really mean. So saturated markets, I was thinking about this question: is any market truly saturated? And I think the answer is probably not. But we do have this problem with lots of markets. I guess you could call them established or mature markets in which it's hard to break into. So if we take an example, a t-shirt example, like say Mother's Day, and let's take Mother's Day. So it's going to be obviously a very popular one. There's going to be thousands of designs, several thousand designs for that market, let's say on Merch by Amazon. There's probably going to be a lot that say something like I love my mom or whatever, just kind of generic designs that are going to take up the first page of that Mother's Day kind of market on Amazon. It's saturated in the sense that there's a lot of designs, but what we really mean is that it's hard to actually get seen because there's so many. So it isn't that you can't break into a saturated market. It's just that there's usually a lot of designs on the same thing, saying the same thing, and it's hard to actually get eyeballs on you as opposed to someone else. As another example, let's say that I wanted to start an affiliate website promoting credit cards or something. So let's say tomorrow I buy a new domain name and I want to start ranking this website and I want to get traffic and eyeballs to it from Google, and I want to rank for things like credit cards or, best credit cards or something like that. So I can, that's technically possible, but in practice, very difficult because there are already multi-million dollar companies who rank for terms like credit card companies, best credit cards, and stuff like that. And they've been doing that for a long time. They have a lot of links, they have a lot of SEO juice. And me starting from scratch is going to struggle to get up there. So, yes, it's possible to enter a saturated market, but you must be prepared with a very long term plan, probably very deep pockets, and you actually have to kind of think about why you're doing what you're doing. Like, there would be no point me doing that and trying to make that kind of, progress into the credit card market if I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a reason to do it. I'm going to just lose interest, or it's not going to really benefit me in the long term if I don't have a plan to go with it. So yeah, the problem is not necessarily that the markets are saturated, whatever that means. It's really that you are going to struggle to get eyeballs onto your work if you are relying on organic traffic and you are doing stuff that already exists to some extent. So you're doing designs for Mother's Day. And I would say that getting a small number of eyeballs is better than getting none. So, because it's easier for a start, but I would rather have people seeing my work, even if it's a small number of people. And then, of course, there's a chance that they might buy, versus there's lots of people looking for this type of design, but they're never seeing my design because my design's on page 50 and no one ever sees it. So I would always rather go after smaller niches, excuse me, rather than go after big ones that I'm never going to get any kind of traction from. So that kind of goes back to, why would you ever want to enter a saturated market? And I think what it comes down to is this. This is the problem. The problem isn't saturated markets, it's unoriginal work, which is to say that, if you search for I Love My Mum, you're going to get I Love My Mum designs. And there's no point producing another I Love My Mum design because there's so many of them already. And even if you do it in a crazy original way, it's still an I Love My Mum design. So that's kind of what I think is the problem with saturated markets. I would always prefer to go down the other route. Following on from that, and on the other hand, here's a thought. Let's say that all t-shirt designs take the same amount of time to produce. So let's say you have, every t-shirt design takes you half an hour, for example. So if you sit down and produce 100 t-shirts, it takes you however long. You could be producing 100 t-shirts around saturated markets, or you could be producing 100 t-shirts around less saturated markets. So why would you want to invest your time on designs that are for busy markets instead of hitting lots of small ones? And I think you should have a good answer to that question before you go after busy saturated markets. I think you should have a real clear picture of why you're doing that, why you're targeting that, instead of just, oh, Mother's Day t-shirts are popular. Well, yes, they are popular, but it's going to be near impossible for you to really make much headway in there unless you've got a particular angle you're coming at it from. And I'll kind of get onto that a little bit later. So yeah, I think, if you're going to be spending time designing anyway, then I would question whether it makes sense to go after these big, busy phrases and big, busy areas, and whether, especially in the earlier stages, you would be much better off targeting small niche, micro niche type stuff where, okay, there's not as much not as many eyeballs, but you can do just as many. You could hit a lot more niches and potentially hit the same volume of eyeballs that you would get and make some decent sales. Just in my personal experience, I've never really had success in kind of a big busy niche. I've never had a design that took off in Mother's Day or any of these kind of generic areas. What I have had success in is first targeting a very micro sub niche, if you like, and over time that kind of design has actually worked its way up the rankings to rank for much more competitive terms. So that's something that can and does happen. But yeah, I don't think personally it's not in my nature to go after like busy stuff for the sake of it. And finally, where's the long-term plan in this? So I would view, Father's Day, Mother's Day, whatever, these kind of things, they're busy and saturated, and they really represent a cash play, which is to say that you get there and you get some sales from them, but you don't really build anything. It's the same kind of principle that is behind selling on Merch by Amazon or Redbubble or TeePublic. Yes, you make cash when you sell, but in 2 or 3 years from now, you just have more designs, more cash. Hopefully, you don't have anything else. You haven't built a brand. You haven't built intangible assets. Um, all you have is the cash coming in. And as we've seen with Merch by Amazon in the past few months, those things can be turned off very quickly, and things can be, moved around and changed. For example, we had our Etsy store suspended earlier this week. We now got it back, but there was a mix up over a tag that was deemed inappropriate, and we got suspended and stuff. Anyway, my point is that these platforms where you don't have a lot of control, you can be switched off. And if you don't build something closer to a real business, a real brand where you have connection with customers, where you have followers and fans you can connect with, then you could be 3 or 4 years down the line, and really all you have is simply, hopefully, a little bit more cash than you had a few years ago. I would always want to be paying attention and thinking about how I can create designs around niches and markets that I could create a brand around, so that in a few years' time, I have more to show than just, a monthly paycheck from Amazon or something. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I'm going to take some questions at this point to try and break up my rambling. Okay, Lang says he gets confused when you say market and a niche. So I'm using them interchangeably, Lang. All we really mean is a group of people that are looking for a particular type of design. So it could be that, market and niche, to me, I'm using them interchangeably. They mean the exact same thing to me. So a saturated market is a saturated niche, and that could be. I'm for some reason I'm picking like Mother's Day, Father's Day, because they were the ones in the question, the original question. What was the other one? Bodybuilding. So obviously body. I think another problem here is it's not necessarily that these markets are saturated. It is that when you're looking at them, you're interpreting them as a very, very broad market. So you're saying bodybuilding, which is incredibly broad, or you're saying mums, which is incredibly broad. Whereas if you broke it down, you would no longer be talking about such a saturated niche. For example, if you said bodybuilders who were also vegans, as I'll kind of get onto in a minute, but if you kind of, combine things like that, then your market then becomes much more smaller, much more specific, much more niche, and much easier to enter and get success in. So to answer that, Lang, yes, I'm using markets and niches interchangeably. I hope that makes sense and isn't too confusing. Jacqueline says perfect time. Yeah, 4 p.m. in Switzerland. That's cool. And we got a good morning from Seattle from anonymous Facebook user. And JL says hi. Hi, JL. I'm not seeing any questions come in there, so I guess I will proceed forthwith. We have one from Andrea just come in. Andrea says, what does creating a brand in this context mean? A special style that's recognizable, a niche, or your own shop if I shop? Yes, very good question, Andrea. So I'm using that brand in a very broad sense. In this context, it could be all of those things. So, for example, your brand could be used very loosely, could be your graphic approach. So, for example, if you think about, let's pull up an example here. If we go to my website and my t-shirt artist interviews. So here's my interview with Stephen Rhodes. This is what Stephen's work looks like. So Stephen is an illustrator, an independent designer. He doesn't own a brand. He doesn't own a Shopify store. He sells his designs through all the usual places we do, Redbubble, TeePublic, Threadless, and places like that. But he has a very recognizable art style and a recognizable approach to ideas and to graphics. So his style is this kind of retro illustration style, and his ideas, usually he's playing off this kind of kids, retro books, and then he's mashing it up with something dark and sinister, and that's kind of the thrust of his ideas. So there's an example of an artist, a designer who's using his style really to build a brand. And now Stephen has become known as the retro t-shirt illustrator guy who does this kind of thing. And now he's licensed in lots of different stores. And that's his brand. So he doesn't actually have he doesn't have his own website where he sells stuff. I mean, he has a portfolio website, but he doesn't have his own Shopify store, for example. He's not building a clothing brand. But he has built a brand around him and around his artwork. So that's one way you could view brand. It could be that if you produce designs like Stephen did around a particular style and a particular visual approach and around a particular kind of concept, then over time that can become a brand that you become known for, and you have more to show for it a few years down the line than if you produced 100 Father's Day t-shirts, for example, that were quite generic. Sure, they were the kind of things that sell in very high numbers, especially around Father's Day, but they are not unique, they are not original, they are not something that you can build a style and a brand around like Stephen Rhodes has done. So yeah, it could be that. It could be a style that's recognizable. It could be around a particular niche. So that, of course, there's examples of specific stores around little niches around stuff. As an example, I'm kind of sticking with the Stephen Rhodes idea here. I don't know whether this place still sells Stephen's designs. Looks like it. So this is a brand called Wicked Clothes, and they just do designs around like occult and, I don't know, magic and black magic and witches and all that kind of stuff. So their approach is a brand built around a niche, and you could call this, I don't know, the occult, the ironic, dark metal kind of niche or whatever. So there's an example of that, and that's a Shopify store built on that. So yeah, brand could mean really any of those different approaches. It could be around a style, it could be around a topic, but if you're, as long as you're doing that and you are sticking to something, what it means is you can become better at it. You can build up a portfolio and a body of work that is relevant to a particular thing rather than being loosely spread and thrown across all these different niches and all these different markets. And so 2 and 3 years down the line, you can take those designs and you can create a brand out of them, and it makes sense. Whereas it wouldn't make sense, if you've got 100 Father's Day designs or something like that, or even worse, 1,000 designs across 1,000 different, or not 1,000 different niches, but 1,000 designs across a few popular niches. It's going to be very difficult to build a brand out of something like that. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. So Lang says, so would something like nerdy bodybuilders, would that make sense? Yeah, that's a good example of taking a broad topic or a broad market and finding something there. Now, of course, is there a market for nerdy bodybuilders? I don't know. You'd have to go and research and look into it, but that's a great place to start, is to just try and combine the broad niche with some other niches and then start doing some research. Are there subreddits about that? Are there Facebook groups around that? Are there Twitter and Instagram influencers or accounts around that? And just kind of start digging. Pupiful, how can we go about identifying smaller niches? Do you perhaps already have some info about that somewhere? Not as such, not that comes to mind anyway, Pupiful. But to answer the question, kind of what I just said, I would start thinking about potential ideas for niches, and then going and having a bit of a dig around and a look around to see if you can kind of verify them. Because of course, if there is a subreddit for something that's got active users, if there's Facebook groups with active users, if there's Instagram accounts with likes and comments and stuff that demonstrate interaction, then it's giving you evidence that yes, there's a potential market there. Now, of course, you're never actually going to get proof that something's going to work until you create the design, put it out there, and get sales. Sales is the only way to prove that you would ever get sales. I get a lot of emails asking me, do you think this would work? Should I create this design? Should I do this? Should I do that? How do I know if this will sell? The only way to know if it will sell is to put it out there and see if it sells. If it doesn't, something's wrong. Something in the system isn't working. And if it sells, okay, it sells. We can kind of keep going at this kind of strategy. Andrew says, do you 100% need to use Amazon ads for any busy niches? I don't think so, Andrew. I've never used Amazon ads, but having said that, I'm not really active in very busy niches. So you might have to do what you might have to do is use something like Amazon ads. Might be one way you could give yourself a kick to perhaps try and get you to climb those rankings faster. But I don't think it's 100% necessary. I think Amazon uses lots of different signals to rank shirts, and I think one of them may be ads. But I think really, if you can drive some traffic to a design, then from an external source outside of Amazon, then that could be just as good a way to start boosting your designs up the rankings. B&A says Stephen Rhodes is sold at Hot Topic stores too. Yes, that's true. Samuel says, I'm bored having only one style. I always try to experience some new style. Do you think this is a problem for me? No, Samuel, but I think it depends on what you mean by having one style. And I mean, Stephen Rhodes has only one style, certainly now anyway, for the majority of his designs. But what he's done is develop that style and become, the best version of that style that he could possibly be. And I think if you do that, it sounds to me like, if you're constantly wanting to try a new style or whatever, it probably means that you're in the early stages and you should be, trying to experiment and do different things until you really find a style that really fits with what you want to do, and that you can actually push and make it as good as it can be. I think, if you're as confident in your style, and you look at someone like Stephen Rhodes and go, okay, yeah, his style, I'm as good at what I do as he is as he is good at what he does, then fine, you've arrived. But until then, you could probably keep on pushing and prodding, and you can try new styles, of course. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of benefit to try and focus on at least maybe 2 or 3 main approaches to something, so that you can keep doing it, so you can get better and better and really be the best that you could be on that particular approach. SA says, could the issue also be how it's promoted? Social media, Pinterest, WordPress, etc. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a little second here, SA. So let me take that opportunity to do so. Okay, so this is an example of how I think about producing new work, producing new designs, and really how everything connects and feeds into one another. So first off, you have like your strategy, which would be like how you're actually going to go and approach a market or something. So it might be that you are going to build a Shopify store. So your strategy is going to be, creating designs for a particular niche. Then you're going to go out and market to find that niche on Instagram or something and do sponsored posts or whatever. Or it could be that your strategy is to profit from organic traffic on Merch by Amazon or Redbubble. And so you're going to just create a lot of designs and just hope that organic traffic comes your way. Whatever, those are 2 different strategies. That's my point. So first you have a strategy, and then you come up with some ideas. Once you have your ideas, you whittle them down, then you produce designs. And then, and this is the kind of one I want to talk about a little bit, then you have to distribute them. So in the case of something like Merch by Amazon, you have your designs and then you distribute them by uploading them on Merch by Amazon. And then that's it, basically. You distribute by putting your designs on a platform where they can be purchased. Now, the problem with like Merch by Amazon is you don't have much control up after that fact. You upload it and that's it. And then you have to hope, if you're trying to tap into organic traffic, that you have used decent keywords and stuff and that the organic traffic will come. But that's what distribution is. And I think there's good distribution and bad distribution, especially on different kind of strategies. For example, if you have a following, if you have Instagram followers, if you have an email newsletter, if you have fans or whatever, then distribution can be as simple as having an idea, producing the design, putting it on Teespring or whatever, and sending the link to your fans, and you are probably going to make some sales through that because you have a direct distribution channel that takes you right in front of people who might buy it, which is much stronger than uploading designs onto a website, hoping people will search for it, hoping people will like your design. So that's why distribution is so important. But there are things you can do after that. You can do promotion, especially if you are, you're going to be driving traffic to your own site or something. And then there's analysis. So each one of these feeds into the next one, and then it all kind of works around in the big circle of life thing. So whatever you're doing and however your strategy and your approach, I would think long and hard about the question of distribution. Where exactly are you going to take this design? How exactly is it going to be found? And how are you going to get eyeballs and sales on that thing? So, to delve into this in a little bit more detail, the question you should always be asking yourself is, how will I get this design in front of customers? Now, like I said, there's some situations where that's going to be a very easy question. For example, if you've been commissioned by a company to create some designs, if Target or Walmart have said, we want some designs from you, please create some designs, we're going to stock them in our stores, we like your style, we're commissioning you. Whatever you produce, we're going to print and put in our stores. In that situation, you don't have to worry about getting the design in front of customers because the retailer is going to do it for you. So happy days. But we're in a different situation when we're selling on Redbubble or TeePublic, and this is the most important question: how will this design get in front of the customers who might buy it? And that comes, that is about not just, I know a lot of us will think immediately about keywords and stuff like that. Of course, that's important, but it's really about also about those are the technical things, the keywords and stuff, but it's also about how saturated the market is in the first place and how busy the marketplace is and whether you have any chance of getting in front. So it's not just technically, but in practice, what are the chances of your design being seen by the kind of people you need to see it? And if it is seen, say, for example, your design was seen, it was on page 304 of the search results, what are the chances of it being purchased? So this is where, if you're producing a design that looks like every other design that came before it on the 3 pages that preceded it, then of course you have very little chance of really making any headway there. But if you have a design that really stands out, that is truly original and unique, then all of a sudden your chances of actually converting go up, and hopefully that, the distribution gets easier for you. Now, of course, we don't have perfect data on this stuff. We can't have foreknowledge of, oh, I think this would be a funny idea for a design. I'm gonna, but I want to test it and I want some data and I want to see how many people are searching for this and how many people buy it and how much competition there is. Of course, you can look online, you can look on Redbubble, you can look on Amazon, you can do your best guess, but really it comes down to testing and throwing designs out there. And it is about the ability to best guess something, to say, okay, well, I think that there's, I can kind of deduce that there's quite a lot of designs around this niche, and there's quite a lot of designs around this niche, and I see that people are active in it. So I'm going to try, combining those 2 areas and do some designs and test it. And I think that's really what it ultimately boils down to. So yeah, to return to our original question, how would you approach a saturated market like mums, grandparents, or bodybuilding, imagining you have no choice and you have to do it? So yeah, let's say I have to do this. I would ask myself, what is my motivation? And I think there's, if I have to do it, what's the goal? What's the objective? For example, it could be that the objective is simply that you want me to put my personal spin on a topic like mums or grandparents or bodybuilding. So the objective there would be simply to create something unique, to create something original. For example, you commission me, kind of like the example we just gave. Say a retailer comes to me and says, Michael, we want you to create a series of designs for Christmas. And I'd be like, okay, brilliant. I really like that, that commission. It's broad. It gives me a lot to play with. I'm going to go and try and create some original, unique designs around Christmas. I'd be very happy doing that kind of thing. So that's one potential goal, but I think this is probably closer to what the questioner had in mind. We don't just want to create something unique for the sake of it, but actually we want to create something that will make sales. So the objective would be to actually make sales from these designs on POD sites. So the gun is to my head and the person says, you have to create some designs for the bodybuilding niche and they have to make sales on Merch by Amazon or Redbubble or TeePublic or whatever. So if that were which one am I doing first? Okay, so first off, let's say that the objective is to create some unique, original approaches, not necessarily to make sales, but simply to, forget about the competition, forget about, metrics and how many searches there are and all these kind of factors. Let's just say we want to create something unique and original, and we don't want to approach, a busy market with the same old stuff. Now, this is going to be good however you're selling, but let's just put all the stats to one side. Let's just kind of focus on this question. So, to create unique original approaches for busy markets, these are some ideas, kind of a brain dump of what I would recommend you do. Number one would be overlap that trend, that market with, overlap your market, your saturated market or niche with a current event or a trend. So if we're taking bodybuilding, for example, what are some trends right now in the world that we could hook into and somehow combine it with? Is there I don't know, is there something around like vegan bodybuilding, or is there something, excuse me, around I don't know, some other food trend or something? I don't know, anything like that that you could start kind of brainstorming and just making a list, and then just going through that list and thinking, okay, is there any kind of spin we could put on it that overlaps it with something else? So that would be one way to approach it. The kind of typical thing I would do is to start coming up with original phrases, jokes, and puns. And if you go back to the session we did a few weeks ago on coming up with original ideas and how I go through that process, I think that would help you kind of see my process. But I would really start thinking about, okay, what are some associated words to do with bodybuilding? Things like gains and lifts and squats and all these kind of things, and I'd list them out, and then I'd just go and try and create some original phrases, some jokes, some puns that haven't been used before, and I would use those as the basis for a design. And they would, of course, be original because they wouldn't have been done before. Similarly, you can look at visual approaches that could spark new jokes. For example, things like parody, like taking a logo and parodying it, or things like taking an iconic visual image. For example, a few weeks ago, we did the example of a murder hornet, and we combined that with the Jaws poster, the standard Jaws poster with the shark coming up to eat the woman. You could combine, visual references that people have a lot of familiarity with. See if you can combine that somehow with the niche that you're looking at to create something original and funny. And you could tackle the topic in your personal design style. For example, if you were Stephen Rhodes and you were commissioned by someone to do a lot of Christmas designs, then they expect that you're going to do them in your particular design style. So it's going to be visually led. And obviously that's perfect for Stephen. He can do some, ironic, funny, sarcastic Christmas occult designs or whatever that are going to be quite funny and original. So this is kind of the approach I've taken in many cases, especially when if I've been commissioned to create designs, or if I'm trying to go after maybe a slightly broader niche, but I want to create a series of designs. So I'm going to create, say 10 or 12 designs around this topic, and they're all going to be on the same visual approach. So they're all going to look the same. They're all going to work together as a collection. They're not going to be, one's going to be really realistic illustration style. One's going to be really cartoony. They're not going to be all different colors. They're going to kind of stick to a consistent color palette, and they're all going to be around, a particular style, and they're going to work as a collection. So it's going to be visual led in that sense. So in that way, like one thing we've done in the past, I say we because me and my designers, we've taken some what we might not call completely original puns, but we've kind of put a little twist on them, but then we've illustrated them in a completely original style and way, and then done 10 or 12 of those designs. And that's a really great approach, especially for long-term kind of business plan, because what you do then is you create a collection which is great for offline licensing. It's something that can work really great when you're doing when you're trying to license your work to retailers and manufacturers and stuff. They like to look at a collection of designs in a similar style so that they have a body of designs they can work from, not just really disparate or one-off designs. It's nice if they can have a collection that they can work with. So that's something I've done with good success in the past. So a couple of questions here or comments, I think. Andrea says, she learned the hard way uploading on the wrong platform, one that does not have enough traffic. Here, your data taught me something. Yeah, I think what Andrea's talking about there is my. If you go to my blog post on the best print-on-demand companies for designers and illustrators, I have some data. I have an Airtable base which track the traffic of the top print on demand sites and kind of gives an estimate for the biggest one. So certainly, if you're just looking at a website, it's very hard to judge or to get any kind of picture of how popular they are. And so you would have to look at other metrics. You have to look at their traffic. You have to look at their social media to try and get a picture of whether that's a good site in terms of traffic. And what you're really looking for are highest traffic but with enough space for you to play in as well. So yeah, definitely you don't want to be playing, down here on Sunfrog where there's very little, very little point putting your designs on there in the first place if you're hoping to benefit from organic traffic. Scott says Brussels squats. There you go, combining veganism or at least vegetables with bodybuilding. And now we have an original idea that we can go and create an illustration from. It lends itself to an illustration, of course. We can do a Brussels sprout doing a squat, and away you go. Now, if you could do another 10 or 11 of those, then you could have a little collection of vegan bodybuilding designs. You could have the makings of a little series that you could offer up to places, or you could even have the makings of a little brand. A good example of that is, I don't know why I'm always doing the realize that all my examples are like the occult metal approach, but I don't know what happened to Brutal Kittens. It used to be on the homepage here. Okay. This is the store's called Brutal Kittens, and it is cat designs combined with metal t-shirt graphics. So Cat Sabbath, Marilyn Meowson, Meowsfits, Hiss, all this kind of stuff. So a mini brand, and if I remember correctly, not an insignificant amount of Instagram followers. Let's just see here. So yeah, 23,000 Instagram followers. Some pretty good likes and interactions over there. So yeah, an example of how you can combine two things: cats, metal, throw them together and create a brand and get some interest around it. So yeah, there we go. B&A have stores on many POD sites under same designer name. Is it best or necessary to make each store have a distinctive collection of designs or items from what's sold in the other stores? No repeats. I think this again comes back to a question of strategy, B&A, and me personally, I have always taken the approach like this. I have said print on demand sites are an exercise in getting organic traffic, free traffic to see your designs and to buy them. And when I have the designs that I've created for that purpose, primarily, I want to have them gaining organic traffic and sales everywhere they possibly could do, because I want to make the most of them. So I have always taken those designs and thrown them up everywhere. So all the designs are on Redbubble, they're all on TeePublic, they're all on Merch by Amazon. So I don't think you have to have a distinctive collection of designs, a different one on each account, if that makes sense. Let me just read your question again. Is it best or necessary to make each store have a distinctive collection of designs or items? So, okay, maybe your question may be more like this. Should I have an account on Redbubble that is just about my metal kitten designs, for example, or my bodybuilder vegan designs? I think there is a potential benefit to that. But I think it depends what stage you're at, and I would say, and what your objectives are. I would say that if you're going an approach like that, what you really want to do is kind of straddle the organic stuff and the potential for future art licensing deals and really building a brand. So I would be less inclined in that sense to be concerned about the organic traffic, and so you might decide, yes, having a dedicated account for that is what we want to do. On the other hand, and related to that, you might also say, I created these designs and my long-term goal is to build a real brand out of them, and therefore I don't want to have those designs on Redbubble and TeePublic because I want them on my store, on my Shopify store, and I want to drive my own traffic and really build my own brand. So those are questions that you have to answer yourself. I think the considerations are: do you want to make sales from organic, platforms and stuff, and organic search, or are you more kind of thinking about using these offline and stuff like that? And I have all of the above. I have designs that are thrown up everywhere, and I have designs that I have not uploaded anywhere except for one particular account, and which we only do one specific kind of thing with. So it really depends on the collection, on kind of your approach and what your deal is. Travis says, "Isn't Brutal Kittens skating the infringement line?" Yes, probably is, Travis. But I'm giving you an example of combining two things. But yes, they are potentially skating the infringement line. Eileen says, "How does that work with copyright? Example, cat shirts would have to bought a license to produce these tees." No, I don't think they've bought any licenses on Brutal Kittens. I think they would defend it under the parody approach, that they are, it's clearly a joke, it's clearly a parody. Of course, it's playing off Metallica or whatever, but it is not a Metallica shirt, and it isn't describing itself as a Metallica shirt, and it's not trying to take sales or income away from Metallica. So I think they've, if this went to law, I'd be pretty confident that Brutal Kittens would probably be able to defend it. That doesn't mean that they haven't had takedown requests and stuff. I'm sure they probably have, especially if they've been using, Metallica, the name Metallica, the word Metallica in their tags or something. They probably would see that. Pupiful, what are the legal implications of doing parodies of copyrighted designs? So just as discussed, I think that the worst that's probably likely to happen with this kind of stuff is that the owner of Metallica or whatever might see it and have an issue with it and say, that's too close to the line, I don't like it, I'm going to file a takedown. And you would probably just have to eat it and go, okay, well, they took down my design. Now, that's not going to happen, of course, for all of these designs. And, depending on the band, some of the bands could be long gone and no one's worried about the licensing or the copyright for them anyway. But yeah, I think, would I go down this kind of route? Probably. I have gone down this route on print-on-demand stuff. What I wouldn't necessarily do is try to build a brand on this stuff, because I do think that would be difficult. I think Brutal Kittens has probably kind of reached the maximum kind of exposure they can get. I don't think there's really much that you can build. You can't really build a brand beyond this. I think they'd struggle to, for example, get these designs in Hot Topic and stuff. Now, I could be wrong there. Maybe they're already in Hot Topic. I don't know. But I think that's really where the legal implications get more complicated, when you go offline and you start dealing with, big retailers and stuff. So those are some of the implications. Like, you can't necessarily build a big brand on stuff like this. And you're always probably looking over your shoulder for the next takedown notice. But this was really an example to show combining niches, not about copyright. Mexican Wrestler, it's never occurred to me to put my designs on other sites. Oddly, I thought they should be exclusive to one POD. Am I relying too much on Redbubble? Am I thinking too old-fashioned? You probably are, Mexican Wrestler. You old-fashioned Mexican Wrestler. Yes, there is no exclusivity on most POD sites. Certainly all the big ones, Merch by Amazon, Redbubble, TeePublic, Society6, all these guys. These are wide open. You don't grant them exclusivity. You simply say, these are my designs, and you can sell them on products as long as you give me a royalty for every one that sells. The only exception is sometimes shirt a day sites like T-Fury and others. They occasionally have been exclusive, but I don't think that's usually the case much these days either. Samuel Chavez says Johnny Cupcakes is a perfect example that you mentioned. Yeah, Johnny Cupcakes is a great example of, he's been able to build a brand. He plays off the IP of others and mashes his brand up with Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, whatever, all the kind of things that his crowd likes. And he does it, but it's mainly about him and his brand. It's always Johnny Cupcakes with Back to the Future. It's never just Back to the Future, and it's never just one thing. It's always about building a brand around his particular thing. Scott says, when doing original phrases, how do you keep them selling? Once I've had a few selling, the copy starts showing up and cut into sales. Yeah, I mean listen, that's the problem with any design. It's not about original phrases or any design you do is going to be copied, and the copycats are going to come once you start selling. So that's a problem with the whole strategy of selling on print on demand. Really, the barriers are so low, anyone can copy you, anyone can come in. I mean, you can file takedowns, you can do stuff like that. But I think in general, you have to kind of take the rough with the smooth, and you have to. I think one of the best approaches is to be targeting new stuff all the time, to constantly have a flow of new designs coming out, so that you are compensating for the drop off that's going to occur as copycats come in. So you think about like a churn rate. You're going to be producing 10 new designs this week, but 2 of your designs are going to drop off because they're going to drop down the rankings because other people are copying them or whatever. So that's where the strategy of constantly producing new work is important if you're primarily looking to make sales through organic traffic via POD sites. And that's why, coincidentally, I would always recommend that you build something that you don't have to compete with other people on. For example, if you are selling your designs in Hot Topic, that you have very little competition once you're in there. You're not competing with a copycat who's copying your design and has managed to get it into Hot Topic as well, because you're going to be the only one on that particular design that they stock. Or if you're selling on your own platform, you have your own Instagram followers, you have your own YouTube followers, whatever it is, you're going to be much more protected because you're driving the sales rather than them coming organically, where someone else can come and undercut you and drink your milkshake. DS Wong says tofu. Vegan martial arts. Yeah, that's a good one. Like Kung Fu, but tofu. Eileen says, so parody can be used on your own website, but not on sites like Red Bull. It's a very murky area, Eileen. There is no right and wrongs, because parody is a defense. It's a fair use defense in copyright. And you don't know whether something is fair use or not until it's gone to law, until it's gone to a judge and it's been decided. Obviously, most of these things never ever end up in court, but that's what fair use is. It's a legal defense. So how you define parody, like parody could be everything from I've taken the Nike logo and written another name over the top of it, or it could be, something like Brutal Kittens, where he's come up with an original idea, combined it with a logo of a metal band, but he's changed it so significantly that it's clearly not, it's clearly not a Metallica T-shirt, for example. So yeah, basically all that to say, parody, if we're using the broad sense of the word, parody can sell anywhere and everywhere, but just be aware that, the closer you play to the real danger, especially, is doing daft things like using the term Metallica in your tags or in your title or something like that. That would be really dumb. What you should do is kind of like what Brutal Kittens did, which is say Metallica Master of Kittens. And hopefully, I'm thinking, if we have a look at this design, nowhere will it say Metallica. So no, it just says Metalhead, Brutal Kittens cat merch. So it doesn't say Metallica anywhere, and it would be very daft for him to say Metallica, because that's going to be a like a big arrow saying, "Hey, copyright infringement over here." So yeah, I mean, it's kind of do you think this design is sufficiently different from the original Metallica design to be a parody? I think it is. I think it's fair use, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be taken down, and it doesn't mean that you won't constantly be looking over your shoulder. So you pay your money, you take your choice, and you what's the phrase? You make your bed and you lie in it. If you do this kind of stuff, you have to always be aware that you could be getting takedowns, perhaps even unfair takedowns. You might think that they're unfair, but it still can happen, and you have to live with it. Emily, is it better to focus on a specific niche for designs when starting out with POD, or is it okay to put all our designs in one store? It's certainly fine to put them all in one store. In my experience, what can the benefit to having specific niches, specific stores for specific niches, or specific Redbubble accounts for specific niches, is that what you might find and what occasionally happens is that people will like a design, they'll go and click on your account, they'll look at your brand, and they'll like the fact that they can now see 50 vegan bodybuilding t-shirts, which is exactly what they're into, so they're going to buy 3 of them or something like that. So that happens, that's the thing. But on the other hand, I think the majority of my income has come through the organic channel. So that would be someone searching on Redbubble or on Google for a specific design, finding my design on Redbubble and buying it. And really, the account that it's tied to is not important. So, yeah, I think it's not a massive thing when it comes to sales, but it could, if you have the time and the inclination, and you are focusing on a specific sub niche, and that's really what you want to do, then having them all in one account and keeping different designs on a separate account can be a good way to go. Chris says, what about manga or anime related designs? I guess you're asking whether that constitutes IP infringement and stuff like that. Certainly, if you're just doing designs around a particular manga or anime, that's going to be that's going to be IP infringement. What Brutal Kittens has done, in my opinion, doesn't really constitute IP infringement, because he's taken 2 things and changed them significantly, and by putting them together has made a joke. So certainly I think there's a case for that. But if you're just doing designs around like an anime or something, then you've got less legs to stand on when you're trying to defend yourself from copyright infringement accusations. Eileen says you answered your question. Great. Okay, let's get through this last bit of slide, and then I'll take some more questions before we finish up. So this was kind of my approach to creating just unique stuff. Now I have some kind of different ideas specifically about how you might make sales in saturated markets. So again, as with the previous one, overlapping with current events can be a good idea, because the idea is that you're doing something new and original that hasn't been done before. If you can combine your niche, your saturated market, with something that's actually happening right now, it is by definition going to be new. So you're probably not going to have too much competition around that. And if that could get popular, then you could rise up the rankings that way. Another way that we've kind of touched on already, combining it with a smaller niche. So taking mums as a big niche and then combining it with vegans, or taking bodybuilding and combining it with vegans. I don't know why I'm on the vegan kick. I'm not a vegan, but that seems to be my example today. Another kind of sub thought here is, if you look at popular phrases or sayings in either of these niches, so let's say you were going to say, okay, I'm going to go with the vegan mum thing, you could have a look for what are the most popular phrases for mum shirts. And then you could say, what are the most popular phrases on vegan shirts? And is there some way you could do a double pun or somehow combine the 2 phrases? I don't really have an example to share, but that's something that I've seen done before. It's something I've done before, and I think it can be a good way to kind of overlap. And what that does is, if you've got a design that gets popular, and let's say it is in a kind of sub niche like vegan mums, as it gets popular, if it does start picking up sales, what it can do is rise up the rankings on the general mum, Mother's Day t-shirt or whatever, the more competitive term. It can actually start showing up there, if it generates a lot of sales. So that's a way you can kind of do stuff. One thing I would do if I was charged with this, I would do some kind of community or niche research, and I'd go and look for, communities online where those people congregate. So if it's bodybuilders, I'd be looking on Facebook groups, I'd be looking on YouTube, I'd be looking on Instagram, I'd be following people, I'd be reading comments, and I'd be looking specifically for like new, and I've highlighted the word new here, I'd be looking for new in-jokes, references, things like that aren't already popular on print-on-demand sites. So, for example, let's say there's a phrase, a particular catchphrase that all the bodybuilders have suddenly started saying, something like, the "do you even lift, bro" thing from a few years ago. Are there new things like that, or jokes like things like leg day, don't skip leg day? Those are legacy examples, but there will be new stuff all the time in these sub niches. There'll be phrases and jokes and in jokes and stuff that are going around the bodybuilder community right now, which there won't be many designs about because they're new and they're only just emerging trends. So if you can grab those before they become popular, then that's a great way to rise up the rankings on the broader trend. Because over time, of course, if you look at the bodybuilding t-shirt designs that are popular right now compared to the ones that were popular a year ago, there'll probably be quite a lot of shift because new designs have come in, new phrases have come in, old phrases have died out, and so there's a lot of opportunity there, constant opportunity, because the waves of trends are constantly moving. To always be finding a way to jump in. And the idea here is, don't know if I wrote about this, but the idea here is you go after specific phrases. So, for example, if you started to spot, a few years ago that bodybuilders were always saying, "Do you even lift, bro?" or "Don't skip leg day," or something like that, then you would be producing a design around that specific phrase, very specific to that phrase. And the idea is that people would go and search for that phrase, and of course, you would have keywords in your title and stuff that said bodybuilding and said the broader categories. But as people searched for it and as it became popular, Amazon would start thinking, oh, hey, here's a design that has bodybuilding in its title and it's selling like twice as many as any of the other designs over here. So we're going to move that to the front page because we think this is a very popular current bodybuilding phrase or design or whatever. So yeah, you can climb the rankings in that way. And finally, the other way is to start the trend yourself. So come up with an original phrase, an original joke, an original approach to something, or a way to kind of take something that's popular in a sub niche or community and create a design that's really perfect for that. And then go and kind of do some sponsored posts or something to cultivate the market and to actually generate traffic for the trend that only you have produced, or the design that only you have produced in the first place. For example, years ago, we did a design around a particular it was a meme that was popular at the time, and we did a kind of uh X for president, like 2020 type design. So I actually produced this design, and did it on shirts and stuff, and did the mock-ups and stuff, and got a few Instagram influencers on board. And this was a completely original design. No one had ever done it before. It didn't exist. But what I did was start the trend and create the market by getting this out there in front of a few of the influencers in that space who promoted the design, started people obviously people then reacted to it, they liked it, they started searching for it, and they started buying it through Redbubble, through TeePublic and others. And I was the only one there. I was the only one with the design because it was mine. Obviously, copycats came shortly thereafter, but for a while there, I was the dominant force, and I was able to make, some good sales off the back of that. So that's another thing that you can really think about, is how can I create something original that is really going to connect with this group, and then how can I kickstart the market for me, and own that whole space around that design for a while. So yeah, I think that's my. Oh, that was just an example of the kind of overlap between two niches there. Um, excuse me. So let me take some questions, and I think we'll probably wrap it up there. I think I have some more stuff, but I think I've covered most of it there. Yeah, I had a few more things, but I think we're out of time. So you can go and download the slides, of course. michaelessick.com/live. You can get access to these slides and all the resources and everything there. But let me take some of your questions before we wrap it up here today. Andrea says, I think the main mistake many of us make, me included, is to create too generic designs. We need to be more original. The art is probably to use a popular keyword and create something new for that. Yeah, basically, Andrea, you've summed it up in what took me an hour to say. You've done it in a very quick way. But yeah, absolutely. The problem is not when I think about like the print on demand market, or you think about people copying each other's designs all the time, or the fact that there's going to be 100 generic Father's Day t-shirts. Yeah, the problem is not really that. The problem is not that there isn't a market there. It's that the market is seeing a lot of the same stuff. And if you can enter the market with something original, with something unique that hasn't been done before, then you have such a stronger base from which to build and make sales, and you have something that's unique to you and that you can actually build, some traction off of. So yeah, of course you're going to use popular keywords, but what you're not going to do is just go after "I love my grandfather," or if granddad can't fix it, no one can, or just using the same stuff that everyone else is. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. What you want to be doing is creating original stuff, but still trying to target the same market, if that's what you want to do. I'm not necessarily, I started off by saying, why go after busy markets in the first place? I don't think it's the best strategy at all, but I understand some people want to do that. And there are ways to do it and make it work. There'll be people today, hopefully people listening to this, who will produce some unique original designs, and I've seen so many examples of this over the years, of people who've been in my Facebook group and stuff and have shared things, and they've been the bestseller, the best-selling Trump design, or the best-selling Christmas design, or the best-selling this or that design, a completely unique original idea they came up with. And because it was fresh and unique and it got traction, they were able to rise the rankings, get on the front page, and really start dominating. And so it does work, and it does happen. I just think long term, it's a difficult one to really recommend. Mexican Wrestler says, time to start uploading to TeePublic then. Wish me luck. I do wish you luck, Mexican Wrestler. And Andrea says, starting a trend is a whole art in itself. It is. I do have a lot more to share on that. It's an interesting topic, something that I've studied, I guess, but looked into, certainly, and I have some great examples of people who are able to start trends and things. The thing is, like, we live in such a fast-paced world, especially online. Trends come and go very fast, and viral things can happen, like that, and they can generate hundreds and hundreds of sales. There's only been a few examples of that in my for me personally, but you can see it happening every day, whether it's an artist who posts a design that everyone loves and wants to buy, or whether it's someone who does a particularly ironic or funny, I don't know, poster or something, and then people start saying, I want it, where can I get it, and stuff like that. The stuff happens every day. So yeah, anytime you spot something that kind of goes viral on Twitter, or could be an anchor for selling something or for promoting something, just make a note of it and save it. That's what I do. And then I come back and look at these and try to deconstruct them and say, okay, how were they able to create such a story that generated so much interest and so many sales? What were the elements there, and how could I do something similar to promote my designs? And I think if you start doing that, you'll start to really get a bit of a picture of what works and what doesn't when you're promoting stuff. Okay. Are there any other questions today before we wrap this up? We have gone for about an hour and 7 minutes. Obviously, thank you to everyone who chipped in and asked a question or shared some thoughts. I will, of course, send out an email for feedback and suggestions for next week. I'll have a think about maybe what would be a good thing to tackle for next week. But yeah, apart from that, I don't really have anything to really sign off on, apart from, of course, you should go to michaelessick.com/live if you haven't already. Make sure you're signed up. If you do struggle, of course, if you struggle to come up with original ideas, you don't know where to look or how to really start thinking about it, then my book, The Little Book of T-Shirt Ideas, packed full of examples, illustrations, and gives you, is it 14, I think? 14 different T-shirt frameworks you can use to come up with original ideas. You can get it on my website, michaelessick.com. If you click on books, you'll be able to find it there. But I think, unless we have any more comments or questions coming through, then we can probably wrap it up there. I'll just give you guys a couple more seconds. Because I know we have a delay on the stream. But yeah, michaelessick.com/live for the PDF of the comments and slides here today. A couple of questions coming in now. Andrea says, thank you, food for thought. Thank you, Andrea. Jennifer says, thanks. Thank you. Kathleen says, you always spark new ideas for me. Get the creative juices flowing. Good. Glad to hear it, Kathleen. Eileen, would you be able to talk about building a brand at the most basic level? Yeah, I'll have a think about that for next week. I have to have a think about how building a brand, how I could really share some thoughts on that. But yeah, I'll definitely include that as one of the options for next week. So if it gets the most votes, of course, we will tackle that one next week. Accidental Fire says thanks. Hey Ramos, starting a trend would be a great topic. Maybe we'll do that one next week. I'll certainly make that an option anyway. Yeah, that could be an interesting one. You're giving me a good idea there. Thank you, Ramos. I'm losing my voice now. Gary says, great advice as always. Thank you. Thank you, Gary. People, how would you apply these principles to purely text-based designs? I think you could probably run through all the advice I gave and simply use it for text-based designs, Beautiful. Coming up with original phrases to use in your text-based designs would be one obvious one. But I always would be wary of recommending people do just text-based designs. I think, if you've been following these for a while, then you'll know that you really want to have something you can protect in your designs. And if you just have a phrase, even if it's an original phrase, it's not protected. So you always want to really do something, whether it's hand drawing the text, hand lettering, or doing some kind of custom illustration that really works into the design so that you're not just going with simple text-only stuff. Of course, text-only stuff does sell, but long-term, it's hard to actually build much strength in your business if you're just doing stuff that can be so easily copied all the time. Okay, Scott says thanks. BNA says thanks. Eileen says thanks. And Rika says thanks. Okay, thank you all, guys, for joining me today. Obviously, I will send out the email for feedback and voting for next week. Hope you're all staying safe. Hope this has helped you think about how you approach saturated markets. And hopefully, if nothing else, you just stay away from going the generic, general approach, and you really try and do something original and unique, because it really does make things that much safer for you and beneficial and lead to much more sales and stuff like that. So I hope that helped. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Kevin says, thanks. I've always liked your poster. Thank you, Kevin. And Marek says, thanks. So yeah, have a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week, and I'll send out an email tomorrow as per usual. All right. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys.